There it is, my friends. I know you hear it. That is the NYJ Ground Crew music coming at you, man. I'm glad to hear it. It's been many months. A.M. Pfeffer, your crew chief, back with Johnny Jets, reporting live from Jets Universe. Johnny, how you been, my man?
Hello, Jets Universe. Oh, what an off season. Let's do this.
It is so good to see you. I am so happy we're back. We came back at the absolute right time. We have missed, the way I look at it, we have missed all the Michigas the past couple of months, and I'm glad we did because who needs it? Of course, we landed right in the middle of it, though, right? Here we are. The man is not yet signed. It is a never-ending daily, weekly, hourly, minute-by-minute saga with this guy. How are we feeling? I need your thoughts on this immediately. Let me stop talking. I need Johnny Jets ranting a little bit on our boy, Aaron Rodgers.
Well, I think that unless, the unlikely event happens that, another team comes in at the last minute and the Packers do allow a trade to an NFC team, which if they've said all along that they will not do, then I think Aaron Rodgers has three options. It's either stay with the Packers, retire, or go to the Jets. I do think that it is most likely he will end up with the Jets. But ultimately, what does it matter? All the talk since February 12th, since the Super Bowl, is that the Jets were one quarterback away from making the playoffs. I wholeheartedly disagree. I believe that the Jets were one head coach away from the playoffs. So you bring in Aaron Rodgers, are they a better team? Yes, they're a better team. Are they still riddled with problems offensively? Yes, no offensive line, a crippled running back, and most importantly, you have a in-game decision maker in Robert Saleh who is deficient, and I don't think Aaron Rodgers solves the problems for the Jets.
Yeah, I mean, look, you said it, and you obviously continue to bang that drum so many months later. We're coming back here, episode 1, season 2, and here we are already talking about Saleh. Rodgers isn't even your lead story. You're still not convinced the man at the helm is the right man for the job. Okay, and I'm listening, and I'm hearing what you're saying, but man, you're talking about absolutely indisputably one of the top 7 quarterbacks in the history of this league. I don't care where you put him. Brady, number 1, that's fine. Even as a Jets fan, we're all going to agree he's the GOAT. Your next 6, however you want to put them somewhere, that's fine. But Rodgers is one of those 6. Does this guy still have any juice left in him? Does he even want to play? Now, to your point, and you mentioned it, I think he's coming to the Jets. All the signs are pointing that this is going to happen. But I think the biggest question is, because, everyone out there seems to know nothing, even our great overlords Ian Rappaport and Adam Schefter and everybody we're watching, except for Trey Wingo made the tweet yesterday that sent everybody into a tizzy. But nobody seems to really know, and everybody keeps pointing back at Rodgers. This all falls back on him. Do you think that's the case, or do you think this is a done deal and there's something more about the contract? Because if you read between the tea leaves, a lot of people are talking about, hey, there's something to be said about the fact that he signed 1 year ago today, March 14th, I think it was, either 13th or 14th. So there was something about 1 year had to lapse in the contract that he had with Green Bay. And there's something about March 17th. There's a lot of conversation about all the verbiage in the contract about March 17th and the way he could retire, unretire, and a few other stipulations in there. Does it feel like all of this posturing is happening just to get to that day? Because once that goes away, then we can have a real conversation about the contract? Or do you think this is just Aaron Rodgers messing with everybody because he can?
I think it could be any of those possibilities. I think the only constant in all of this is that the New York Jets are hands down the worst organization in the history of organized sports. And it's so predictable that they're being played, by a 39, soon to be 40-year-old quarterback who really is out of options if you are reading the tea leaves. They went out to California to meet with him. They said all the things coming out of that meeting, that it went great. It was a great conversation, blah, blah, blah. But here we are, free agency starts tomorrow, and, under the radar, free agency started yesterday, and all the other options really, have been signed up by other teams. It's like, if it's clear that the Jets are all in for Aaron Rodgers, but, it takes 2 to tango. And if Aaron Rodgers doesn't want to go to the Jets, then he's either, I think to me, it really comes down to how much is it worth it to Aaron Rodgers to lose. I think in his brain, it's like this Jets team will lose with him. And so it does send me to depreciate my contract to take less money, and just lose, or I could hold this team up for as much as I can get and still lose anyway. Right. So if I was Aaron Rodgers, and I'm not, I would ask for a 2-year, $100 million a year guaranteed contract up front, blow up the salary cap, make them get rid of every other player on the team and just collect my money and lose. He'd be with the team already if he wanted to be a Jet, if he was really serious about winning. But it's so predictable.
That's the thing is, I'm not so sure about that. Again, everyone wants to point back and put it on this guy, but there might be something about the contract. And that's worth discussing, the contract, because the contract that he signed with Green Bay last year, or another way to put it, the ridiculous, ludicrous, insane agreed upon contract that Green Bay gave him last year was just absolutely something that, like, I can't really fathom. And I don't think anybody who can even follow this sport understands, like, just what Green Bay did in how they offered him that contract and let him hold them hostage. The 1 year that he had last year, it was done like expecting him to retire and then saying, hey, thanks for your 18 years of service. Let's pay you Bobby Bonilla ridiculous money over that time frame. Or we have to trade you because, these 2 years that are on the contract with them right now just don't make a lick of sense. It's way out of bounds. And I'm wondering, again, if that's part of the holdup on our side of the fence, because there's so much to go through and you got to sign a very different contract. Now, you're talking $100 million a year. That's what, if you're Aaron Rodgers, you would do. And then, something, I don't think you're out of line to say something like that. I mean, there's FU money and then there's F everybody money, right? And Rodgers at this point can kind of get to that point and say what he wants. Obviously, no one's going to do that. We're not giving him that kind of money. And no, we shouldn't be giving him $100 million. But yeah, he's out of options, right? Nobody else is banging on the door coming from. Green Bay just said, hey, you get one team to negotiate with. That is the New York Jets. And do you, Aaron Rodgers, who has this 18-year history, you got 4 MVPs, you won the Super Bowl, you're on the brink of retirement. You're leaving one of the, if not the most storied franchise in the history of the NFL to go to, as you put it, let's just call it like this, man. We are the worst, if not the top 3 worst franchises of all time. And I love you, Jets, forever until you put me in the ground. But that is the truth about it. And does he want to come here and play out 1 to 2 years with the New York Jets? The weird thing is, it seems like he does because, he wants to play football.
I guess. I mean, what indication has he given that he wants to play football?
The fact that he hasn't already retired. The fact that there's conversations. The fact that he entertained having a massive crew come out and have dinner with him. It's one thing to mess with the media. Do you need to mess with Woody Johnson? I mean, unless the only way I would put it is, like anti-vax Aaron Rodgers, like, hey, I want Johnson and Johnson boy to come out here and I want to look him in the eye while he buys me a meal and really mess with him. But again, we're talking like, I don't think
it's that. I think it's anti-lousy football owner Woody Johnson. I think that he holds the team in utter contempt. He's, you can say what you want about Aaron Rodgers. He's not dumb. He's very smart. He's very well read. He's very knowledgeable what's going on in the world, and he's been very aware of how Woody Johnson has mismanaged the Jets franchise since 2000. So you can say what you want about the attributes of Joe Douglas. Joe Douglas has had a hit and miss record at best. If you look at the 2020 draft, it was a train wreck. The 2022 draft seems to be like is one of the best drafts of all time. Robert Saleh has been below average at best as a head coach. So what I think it comes back to, if Aaron Rodgers wanted to be on the best Jets team possible that he could be, then the contract would already have been done. The Jets would know exactly what the numbers are involved. And then Aaron Rodgers would be a partner in the process of a game plan to bring in the best assets to put around Aaron Rodgers so he's not getting killed every game. Now, Mike White is not as durable as Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers is more durable than Mike White. But if the Jets have no offensive line, and right now they don't have an offensive line, the game plan, because Zach Wilson right now, I think, is the only quarterback on the Jets, the game plan for any opposing defense is to injure Aaron Rodgers. And if there's no one blocking for him, eventually he's going to get hurt, and then the Jets are not going to have Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, look, I mean, at some point we're going to fill out the offensive line. We're going to talk about that in a couple of minutes, but just sticking with Rodgers himself for a minute, trying to understand this man, right? And again, I don't pretend to know what he thinks, what he's ultimately going to do. Is he holding us hostage? Is he messing with the media? Does he like the fact that he's holding 2 organizations in the palm of his hand? Does he like the attention? And all of that honestly doesn't matter. The fact of the matter is he hasn't put in the retirement papers, and all the signs are pointing to him coming for whatever reason and playing for the New York Jets. But to me, really, and as exciting as it is to get one of the top 7 quarterbacks of all time in this league, It comes down to the contract. The contract was ludicrous with Green Bay, and a lot of that falls on Rodgers for even doing that. Tom Brady in his heyday never held the teams hostage. He filled himself out with a lot of people around him. He made his money elsewhere and still made plenty of money on the contracts. Rodgers, for whatever reason, needed to plunge in that sword and get that blood last year and lost Devontae Adams for it. And Devontae Adams, call it like it was, that team was tilted towards him, not Rodgers. The team was built around offensively around Devontae Adams. You lost him. You lost a very big identity of who you were, and you saw it in what they ended up with their record last year and where they didn't go. And Rodgers was hurt, obviously. But does the guy have football left? And does he want to come here? Is this about legacy? Is this about setting up his time in New York and having something to be said after the NFL and he wants to be in New York? Look, he's a coastal guy, right? I mean, no, you can't just say that he's a Green Bay guy. Like when you talk about Derek Carr, and we talked about him last year, I never believed that he was the right guy for the Jets in any way, shape, or form, right? Sugar Land, Texas, Fresno. He loves Las Vegas. Didn't think he was right for the Jets or the media. He's already proven that from some of the things he said when he went down to New Orleans. Rodgers, to me, is absolutely the right guy. Again, F everybody money, right? The guy is 40. He doesn't care. He says what he wants. He's 18 years in this league. He's done all of it. He's hit every milestone, won every award you could possibly imagine. And I don't even know if this is about legacy. Does he even have just the feeling of coming back and playing football with young guys again and doing it with a new organization, Jets notwithstanding?
Well, I don't see how you could add the Jets notwithstanding to the end of that statement. There's 31 teams in the National Football League, and then there's the Jets. So if Aaron Rodgers wants to potentially, depreciate his legacy by playing for a team other than Green Bay and then having a bad experience with that other team, that's just playing with another team that's bad. If he goes to the Jets, then he just joins a line of players that came to New York that were supposed to be the savior, and it was a train wreck. And he definitely risks that potentiality if he does that with the Jets. It's a potential blight on his legacy that you just can't get rid of. Now, the counter to that is like when people think of Ronnie Lott, do they think of Ronnie Lott, playing for the Jets? Probably not. But the fact is that Ronnie Lott came to the Jets like many other mercenary players at the end of their career, Hall of Fame players, for big paychecks. So, I mean, if that's the reason why Aaron Rodgers wants to come to New York, I get it. If he wants to come to New York because he thinks even in 2023, which I don't, that New York is some kind of advantage to set up some sort of career in the media, I don't think so. He's a California person. He could easily stay out in California and Hollywood. I just think that he's smart enough to know that the head coach of the Jets is not good. They have no offensive line. The running back is crippled. And he in and of itself, he cannot carry this team to the Super Bowl and win the Super Bowl. And if they're not winning the Super Bowl, what is the point of him coming here from Aaron Rodgers' perspective?
Yeah. And by the way, Ishant Ariel, thank you very much for your comments here. I put you up here. You're saying as a lifelong Jets fan, and I think you're joking, honestly, that we want to stick with our franchise QB, Zach Wilson, believe in Zach Wilson. No, sorry to say, I think as Johnny and I have both talked about ad nauseum, we're going to talk about Zach in a moment. I don't even like the fact that the kid's still on the roster and we should be moving off of him. But, look, Johnny, you bring up great points about Rodgers. I hope I brought up some good ones as well. We don't need to speak too much further about this because he's going to make a decision at some point, or the decision, again, has already been made and we're going to find out this was all a contract issue to begin with, whatever it may be. More than likely still expecting to see him on the Jets, and I expect it by the end of this week, not necessarily today, tomorrow. I'm pegging March 17th specifically because of the contract. So if it happens between now and then we'll find out what the reasoning was. But if it doesn't happen until March 17th, it'll explain a lot as to what he's got going on in that contract with Green Bay. Now, speaking of assets or bringing in, and again, we're going to talk about that offensive line, and Johnny, you brought it up, but there are two guys that there's a lot of conversation about all of a sudden who are also Green Bay guys. Allen Lazard, who apparently we're in negotiations with. And do you think we would have been in negotiations with this guy had it not been for Aaron Rodgers? Your thoughts on him?
Well, I think that would certainly be a help. I don't think that wide receiver is necessarily an area as the greatest area of need for this team. But to have depth in that, when then you put, Elijah Moore and Denzel Mims one slot down, along with, the top two, then, that understanding that there's going to be injuries from time to time throughout the season, that only helps the team. And obviously, as you said, there's that background with Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, and by the way, I'm not saying you're even putting Elijah Moore a step down. You might just move him to the slot permanently, right? Because Lazard could fill out that number 2. I mean, the guy is 6'5", 4'5" speed. He's a burner. He's deep threat all day. Pair him with Garrett Wilson. You got a serious one, too. Corey Davis, as we know, has some great attributes, especially his run blocking and all of that. but can he even stay on the field? Allen Lazard, 27, still young, still healthy. I like his lineage. The other guy they're talking about is bringing in Cobb, right? I mean Randall Cobb, right? Do you know? I mean, give me some numbers on Randall Cobb. Do you know when he was drafted? What year?
All I think is Randall Tex Cobb, and that's how out of it I am.
Second rounder out of Kentucky, 2011. Green Bay, by the way, brought him in. Then, of course, he left, played for a few more teams, then came back because Aaron Rodgers there wanted him on the team. And that is what we're all talking about here, right? We're talking about these two guys because the potential of Rodgers coming here and bringing in the two guys that he ultimately trusts and wants on the team. Cobb, at least you could see as a good backup in the slot, or when you're running 4 receiver sets, he could be out there as well. Give Rodgers as many options as possible because you want him throwing 40 times a game and seeing where that goes. So, again, interesting names to be thrown out there. Interesting that the Jets are negotiating very specifically with Allen Lazard. And this, I think, bodes well for Rodgers coming here. Again, I'm trying to get excited about this. And I guess before we move on, are you excited? I mean, I'm using that word again, notwithstanding all the other stuff that we're talking about here, the franchise itself, what's going on with Green Bay, how many other quarterbacks are out there. Are you excited at this point today on March 14th with the idea that Aaron Rodgers could be the New York Jets quarterback?
No, I'm not excited. I don't expect greatness from an Aaron Rodgers team that's coached by Robert Saleh.
I figured that would be your answer. Now, you had mentioned something else about no other options out there. Well, there is one that's still on the table, and an interesting one, and he bears conversation for sure. Lamar Jackson, okay? Because everybody's like, hey, if this doesn't work out with Rodgers, pivot to Lamar Jackson. But something very interesting, and call it strange, is going on with Lamar right now. Nobody lining up to talk to this man right now. He is literally on the market. He is being dangled by Baltimore, right? You put that non-exclusive tag on that out there. We're saying, hey, we're either going to pay him $32 million a year, which I think is what the non-exclusive tag is for him for Baltimore this particular year. And already Lamar is given indication that he's not going to play for that. Or, hey, give us 2 first-round picks. You make an offer, and we'll see if we match it. What's going on here? And should we be lining up to be the first in line if Rodgers doesn't come to get Lamar?
Should we be the first in line? No. Will we be the first in line? Yes. That's what Woody Johnson is all about. Woody Johnson, in his brain, is about putting people in the seats at Giant Stadium so he can make as much money as he can. He's not a football person. He's got a double-digit football IQ, and he is the fish rots from the head, all of those cliches and so forth. They all apply to Woody Johnson. Deshaun Watson, as far as I know, does not have an agent. I think that is at least a significant factor.
I'm sorry, who? I think you just said Deshaun Watson.
I'm sorry, I had a Deshaun. Bring up the Deshaun Watson point in a moment. Lamar Jackson doesn't have an agent, and from my understanding, that's at least one of the significant reasons why there's been as less than you would think. Discussions with Lamar Jackson and NFL teams about playing. Certainly with the Jets, they're all in with Aaron Rodgers, and that has to go up in flames before they would talk to Lamar Jackson. Obviously, the Deshaun Watson contract with Cleveland, the guaranteed money, the amount of the money, all those things, that kind of blew up the entire quarterback price tag for the entire league. And all of the owners and probably including the Cleveland owner, they want to have some kind of reset. They don't want to set the bar based on the Deshaun Watson contract. They want to do it based on a pre-Deshaun Watson contract universe. I don't know if that's possible, but I think certainly that's the strategy, and I don't think it has anything to do other than economics and money.
Yeah, look, a couple other quarterbacks out there who got some crazy money last year as well, and Murray, and then ultimately what happened with that very strange contract situation.
Was it all guaranteed?
Not all of it, but a lot, but a sizable amount, and then obviously the clause that was in there about playing video games, and then they had to take that out. And then what happened with Russell Wilson, right? Because you saw a 32-year-old guy who got a tremendous amount of money and the draft capital they had to give up for him, and then he came in and looked like a 42-year-old guy. So, there's definitely some hesitation, some pause, and I think something else is going on with Lamar as well. It's the notion of kind of, again, how he handled this at the end of last year, not playing, the things that he did on social media, whatever it is. Does everybody want this again? Do these teams want to go through this if they're giving away this insane amount of guarantees? Again, he hasn't been on the field for all 17 games the last 2 years. And you just got to look at what you're ultimately giving up. Is he worth 2 first rounders? You're damn right he is, right? I would happily say, and I talked about him last year, that the number one target and I want him to be. And I'm not looking at him as a 10-year option, but I'm looking at him a good 4 to 5 years. And is he worth a sizable contract that's over $200 million? Yes, he is. But what is the guarantee? And it shouldn't be $300 million, and it shouldn't be, most of it guaranteed. And that's a problem. Because if he's looking for all of that and is negotiating and thinking that he's going to get all of that and he wants to prove a point, then, well, good on him. It's just not going to happen at this point, and nobody's lining up to do all of that, right? It's just not. I mean, it's, of course, the premium position, of course, how important it is. And yes, he is that good. And yes, he is the one guy who actually matters, and he's that young. The one guy, at least in this realm, in the quarterback realm, I think, who moves the needle besides an Aaron Rodgers, right? Because if you do get, MVP level Aaron Rodgers and you get him rejuvenated, you get him excited playing for a year, sure, he's that incredible and all of that. But Lamar is somebody you can look at and say, sure, I have a 4 or 5 year run if this all works out, so maybe that's worth it. But yeah, the market for him has become very strange. And excuse me, but that's it, right? There's nobody left. And I guess in the long run, like, do you think he's worth 2 first-round picks? Do you want to pivot to Lamar? We know Woody would, right? And Woody now, especially after the pandemic, IQ notwithstanding, there's that word again, but IQ notwithstanding, the man's got more money and now he's ready to throw it around. I'll at least give him that.
Well, your question has two parts to it, and my answers to them are slightly different. Do I think Lamar Jackson is worth 2 first-round picks? I do. Would I pivot to Lamar Jackson? I would not, based on the amount of money that he wants. I just don't think that he's worth, Deshaun Watson money. I don't think Deshaun Watson is worth Deshaun Watson money. And I disagree with you. I think it would be wonderful if Aaron Rodgers comes in and plays at an MVP level. He could come in and play at a Fred Sanford level. Father time is unpredictable like that. And the same thing with Lamar Jackson. A huge amount of his game, not all of it, but a huge amount of his game is predicated on his legs and is predicated on his running. And if he's in a Zach Wilson situation where he's running for his life every play because the Jets are not blocking for him, and he gets some kind of Breece Hall injury where all of a sudden his running game is depreciated and he's not, as dynamic a player as he once was, and the Jets have signed him to a long-term big money contract, well, then they're stuck with him. I would be more comfortable. I don't agree with you about the Derek Carr point. I think Derek Carr, if you're going to go away from Mike White, I think Derek Carr would have been a serviceable player that you could rely on to play for 5 or 6 years and then spend the money on shoring up the offensive line, putting weapons around him. And then after this year, when they fire Robert Saleh, bring in Brian Flores or another reputable, competent head coach, and then you have Derek Carr for the next 5 or 6 years.
I mean, you're playing a lot of hypotheticals there. And the problem with Carr, again, he's also 32 years old. And to me, again, until you're proving that you're good on the other side of 32, which Aaron Rodgers has, he proved it at 36, 37, 38 years old. That's what's interesting about Rodgers. And at least, I could point to that and say he is one of the anomalies after that age group where he can come and play at a high level. In fact, back-to-back MVP seasons, except for last year, certainly. But he didn't look like he didn't necessarily want to be out there. He did look injured, obviously, with that thumb, and a whole different team without Devontae Adams on that. But Carr, I wouldn't even want to think about that, especially looking at, seeing the cliff, the drop off with Russell Wilson. I don't know. And I don't want a serviceable quarterback. I never did. If we were going to do that, and we talked about it so many times last year, Mike White is just as serviceable. I don't see a tremendous difference between White and Carr, other than the fact that White gets hurt. Okay. And let's talk about these guys for a second, because I want to move on to Wilson and White for a second, because Wilson, to your point, Zach Wilson is who we have on the roster. Let's break it down. Base salary this coming year, $940,000. Roster bonus, $2.915516 million, $2,915,516. But his cap hit is $9,586,549. Not terrible, by the way. It's still under $10 million, so you could deal with it, and now he's your backup, and obviously it's clear he's going to be on the team. The dead cap value, and this is the issue why he's especially going to be on the team, $20,770,856. He's your backup quarterback. But Mike the White Knight White, Mike effing White, our boy on Instagram, who gave us a great send-off to the Jets yesterday, said some nice things, but next to a picture of him in a Miami Dolphins shirt at 5 years old, which, by the way, good for you, Mike. I thought that was awesome. He's getting paid essentially $4 million a year to be the backup. And you say, wait a second, $4 million a year? I thought it was 2 years, $16 million. Well, that comes with a lot of action. That comes with a lot of incentives and milestones he's got to hit. But if he does hit them, I think it's interesting to point out that he is going to be essentially the highest paid backup in the league, right? Who was the highest paid backup last year? Jimmy G. We saw he just got a 3-year deal with the Raiders, and they're paying. We know what the Raiders, they're overpaying him. Bridgewater was second. The man he replaces, he was getting $6.5 million flat just to be the backup to Tua. And we all know what could happen to Tua. But, you look at Miami and they said Mike White was the right guy. And we lost him. You and I both liked Mike White very much. And I really liked him, especially if he was going to be our backup. And I wish he was on the team. Are you upset that he's gone? Are you saying whatever? I mean, or you're more upset Zach's just on the team, regardless of whether it was Mike White staying or anybody else who could replace him?
Well, I mean, it's been a done deal for a long time that Mike White was not returning to the Jets. So, as we speak today on March 14th, I'm not devastated by the fact that he's gone because it's something that we've known for a long time that Jets did not want to win with Mike White, and obviously his durability is something that cannot be counted on. Certainly when you have no offensive line, as the Jets don't. I look to Mike White, winning 3 to 4 games as a starter in Miami just based on Tua's injury history. Mike White's going to get an opportunity to play. In that situation with protection and with a better coaching staff and skill players, you can see Mike White, not only winning several games for the Dolphins, but potentially beating the Jets twice next year. Zach Wilson, we talked about it all last year. He shouldn't be on the team anymore. I don't know what happens if the Jets are able to trade him, for a blocking dummy. Does that mean that they don't get hit with the dead cap number and they can escape? Is that like an escape valve that would work if they can get someone just to take him?
Yeah, dead cap would be ultimately we're cutting him, right? So you're going to get hit with the dead cap number.
What if they trade?
The question is but there's a cap hit as part of his contract, so it's like, hey, how much of that do we have to eat? Again, his salary, right, or his base salary, $940, his roster bonus just to be on the roster, just a shade under $3 million, but his cap hit, and I believe a team has to absolve that number.
So even if the Jets trade him, they're still hit with those numbers. Okay, got it.
Well, somebody's going to take his cap hit. So it's, hey, if I believe the cap hit follows the contract. I don't want to speak out of turn here, but if that's the case, then we're probably going to have to pay a portion of that for the new team to take a part of that cap hit.
Yeah, I mean, Zach Wilson will at this point will go down, even more than James Morgan as Joe Douglas's worst draft pick as the general manager of the Jets. There's still a story to be written potentially. Zach Wilson could turn it around. Is it likely that he will? No. Do I expect him to? No. I think that his problem is between his ears. I don't think it's it's anything else than that. But the fact that he's the backup,
limited in size and scope too. I mean, the fact
that he's the backup to Aaron Rodgers, I think is very, very concerning, and I think it's also illustrative of just the incompetence on the entire Jets organization. If Zach Wilson's on the team, he should not be the backup quarterback. Whether it's Jacoby Brissett or whomever that they could bring in as the backup to Aaron Rodgers, it should not be Zach Wilson, because if you consider that Aaron Rodgers will get hurt, and that's, not that you expect him to, but say, okay, what happens if Aaron Rodgers gets hurt and he misses 3 or 4 games? Who's our starter? You can figure that 3 or 4 games could be the difference between the Jets making the playoffs or not making the playoffs in 2023. If it's Zach Wilson, you got to write in that 3 of those 4 games are losses. Right. So
let's play this out for a second, because if you do this, if you bring somebody in, I couldn't agree more with you. Bring somebody else in who's got to be the actual backup, not Zach Wilson. Couldn't even consider his name unless 2 guys go down, and then you're just stuck with him. Right. But either you're carrying 3 expensive quarterbacks on your roster, okay, or you're putting him on the practice squad and having to protect him every week or whatever it is, and now you're paying a fortune for a practice squad guy and obviously a cap hit against it. Trading is the absolute best option. Taking the hit on the money. Getting him off the books, whatever it may be, and taking back whatever you can get for him. You lost the 7th rounder for Chuck Clark. I'd take back the 7th rounder just to get Wilson off the team. But, going back to what you talked about, the offensive line, that's really the big question mark, even more than the quarterback right now. Because, again, I think we both agree Rodgers at some point by the end of this week is going to be inked to a deal for the New York Jets. It will be a hell of a talking point come next Tuesday when we're on the show, and even more of a talking point if he's not. But let's talk about that offensive line. I mean, what are we doing to fill this out? Dwayne Brown coming back. He's 38. You got Rodgers, who's going to be 40. You've got Dwayne Brown, who's 38, protecting him on the blind side. Okay. You got Max Mitchell maybe on the right side, or, the newly slimmed down, and although you claimed he'll never suit up for the Jets again, Mekhi Becton possibly on the right, or maybe the left. You got Laken Tomlinson, who's clearly coming back. okay, because you had to restructure his contract recently just to clear cap space. So obviously they did that for a reason, and he's coming back, and we're going to talk about his numbers in a couple of minutes. And now you lost Connor McGovern to Detroit. So you got a sizable hole in the middle. And AVT, our one guy that we all agree can play any of the positions, and he's going to be great whether you put him on the left or the right, whatever it is. And hopefully he's healthy. But you expect on an injury like that, he'll come back and he'll be spectacular. Let's talk about the center position. Because who's out there, right? Ethan Pochet's signed again with the Browns. He was probably the best besides Kelsey on the Eagles, who was obviously for sure if he was coming back, going back to the Eagles. Why wouldn't you? You just made a Super Bowl run, and that's where you've been forever. But now, both McGovern's gone. And who's left out there? Garrett Bradbury, 27 years old from the Vikings. And then, Ben Jones on the wrong side of 30. The Titans cut him. And John Feliciano, also the wrong side of 30, 31, just down the road with the Giants. So what do we do here? I mean, are we drafting? Are we bringing somebody in on the center, on the pivot? I mean, how do we replace this? And how do we make this offensive line good enough to protect Aaron Rodgers?
Well, in terms of whether we're drafting the center or not, we really need to know first, like what Green Bay is getting for Aaron Rodgers. And part of this might be, and everyone's saying that it's all about Aaron Rodgers, being stealth or whatever, but it could be that the Packers are holding up the Jets for the first round pick that the Jets possess at number 13. That could be part of the equation as well. The Jets don't have the number 13. I mean, obviously, I would hope that they would take an offensive lineman with the 13th pick. The center might be a reach at 13, but Joe Douglas does have a habit of trading back from time to time. If they don't have the first round pick, they have the second round pick, then, you can take a center there. Everyone, wants to say how great Jermaine Johnson potentially will be and that he was, certainly not terrible as a rookie. There are times certainly against Buffalo where, he shined. But the Jets had the opportunity to trade up in the same exact way and take Tyler Linderbaum last year, who's now in the Ravens. That would have been the center for the Jets for a decade. Dwayne Brown, that's Ryan Khalil, Mach 2. Will he even last the whole season? He didn't last the whole season last year. I mean, he did, but he only had one arm. So now he's going into the same situation, a year older. I mean, between drafting and signing free agents, I guess they're going to try to do that. With the Jets, it will probably come down to waiver wires, and then they'll try to put a bow on that, lipstick on a pig, whatever.
Wow, we're going to be in a lot of trouble if it comes down to waiver wire issues if you're bringing in a center. I mean, that position specifically is way too important.
A lot of trouble, and the Jets go hand in hand.
Yeah, we know that. And Joe Douglas has done pretty well on the waiver wires and some trades at the last minute here to fill out some of the spots here, but the pivot.
And we also need to get back that 5th round pick we invested in James Robinson, who's no longer on the team.
Yeah, right. And that's fine. And I'm not upset that he took a swing on the 6th round pick. It wasn't right. They could have kicked the tires a lot better on that before they brought him in and realized what they had. And you already had Bam Knight on the roster, blah, blah, blah. And we can go down that road if we want. I'm sure we'll talk about it this season, but I want to stick with the offensive line. I like Dwayne Brown a lot more than a lot of people do. I still think he's got a lot left in the tank. His numbers when he was on the field, even with one arm, were actually pretty stellar in some specific categories that you like to see, certainly, especially in pass protection. But let's see how much better he is this year. If he can be healthy and he had both arms and both shoulders, if he's that good, because he really is. I mean, he is an all-timer at that position. There's no question about it. Maybe not Hall of Fame all-timer, but he's an all-timer as a left tackle, certainly. And he's an all-pro a number of years. But yeah, he's getting up there in age. I just want there to be depth behind him because we lost so many tackles last year, and that's a big part of the equation. And especially if Mekhi could come back and he doesn't have his starting job, and if that's the case, that's the case. But at least he can fill in for the position. But yeah, Tomlinson was a real issue last year. I mean, huge and a much bigger issue than everybody understands. And let's just talk about him for a second because here's his restructured contract. Base salary, $4.6 million. Roster bonus, $400,000. But the big one, the asterisk, the restructured bonus of $8.1 million we're giving this guy with a cap hit of $10.88 million and a dead cap value of $21.22 million. He is not going anywhere. You're not trading him. You're not getting rid of him. You're not cutting him. At this point, you've restructured. You've given him that massive restructured bonus. And you better hope that if Aaron Rodgers comes to the team, he wants to block a lot better for him than he ever did for Zach Wilson or any of our other quarterbacks, certainly. But I don't know what we're going to do with this center position. I'm really curious to see what happens. And if we do draft somebody, well, now you got a rookie in one of the most important positions. Last time we had that, Mangold, he was fantastic, but he wasn't necessarily fantastic his rookie year. It was everything after that. So to your point, and it's a good one, little bit of concern what's going on that offensive line, whether it's Rodgers there or not. Any other suggestions, any other thoughts on the offensive line before we move on? Not really.
It does not seem to be an area of concern from the Jets administration. So
I don't know. Hold on a second. Let's give Joe Douglas credit. I mean, he has drafted a lot of guys high at that position, including trading up to get AVT. But I couldn't agree more with you about Linderbaum. You know, Johnson was good last year, but he also was somewhat concerning. It was concerning that he couldn't get off special teams after a while, and he had a couple of big plays and whatnot. But I don't know. There's some rumblings about him not being the guy they really need on the edge to take over. And that's big. That's very big because, you know, especially what's going to happen with our edge rushers. Bryce Huff is fantastic. His numbers on third down are great, but he's not a 3-down guy. And he's an absolute liability off the run, on the run off the edge. So that's an issue right there. But you need, if you're getting rid of Lawson, and who knows if they are, because if you're taking on all these new guys, especially a huge contract and what it'll be for Rodgers or Lamar Jackson or whoever else that isn't Mike White, you know, you got to figure you can't keep everybody. So that's Mosley or Lawson who could become a casualty. Most likely Lawson, I've heard rumblings that we're shopping him. Well, who do you have to replace him on that side of the ball? You know, can Johnson step in? So to your point, you know, it would have been better served if we had probably gotten a long-term 10-year center out of it, because it's much more of an important position in the long term, because if you can find the diamond in the rough or find at least one good edge rusher, well, it's more important to protect your quarterback, more important the guy who's anchoring your offensive line. But let's talk about some of the other moves the Jets have made since Super Bowl. Quincy Williams is back, 3 years, $6 million. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, according to pardon me, according to Jets Twitter, it was Quincy Williams that blew the Lions game. You know, the tape said to me that it was C.J. Mosley that ran by Brock Wright and let him go. But Jets Twitter, which I call Jets sanctioned Twitter. It's interesting, you know, the Jets Twitter YouTube series is starting tomorrow, and the little preview that they have, one of the Jets Twitter people says, you know, the off season is now, you know, just as important as the regular season. And I think that really crystallized the whole philosophy of Woody Johnson and the entire Jets organization. You know, any emphasis you put on the off season depreciates, you know, the value and the worth of the regular season, which is just illustrative as to why the Jets don't really care if they win or they don't. You know, it's like any kind of bells and whistles, shiny objects, whether it's Aaron Rodgers or whoever it's been in the past, you know, just Woody Johnson knows that will get people in the seats. That will get people to, you know, for clickbait or whatever. You know, I like to think that, you know, Jets free Twitter will win in the end. But it's clear that the Jets Twitter is just a paid for, subsidized PR wing of the New York Jets LLC. They're all the same echo chamber again and again and again. It's the same nonsense, the same silliness. You know, no one's calling out, you know, Robert Saleh to be fired. No one's calling out Woody Johnson to sell the team. It's all about, you know, the day-to-day. Oh, it's this, it's that. It's this, look here, oh, a birdie or whatever. You know, it's like, fine. But to get back to your point, if
oh no, we're way past that point, and I appreciate it. I brought up Quincy Williams, and
So when I posted the point, which by the way, C.J. Mosley liked it when I said that he was personally responsible for losing the Detroit game and the game at Buffalo.
He did like your tweet.
C.J. Mosley personally liked your tweet. You know, they all came back and said, no, it was Quincy Williams that got suckered into the running back, because that was he had the responsibility on the tight end. So yeah, of course he's being rewarded, and you know,
well, look, I brought him up because I was trying to lead you to Quinnen Williams, right? We got to sign this guy, so we're trying to keep him happy. I mean, Quincy Williams, $6 million a year for 3 years. He's getting overpaid. Okay, he was, you know, I mean, I don't know who else was after him necessarily, or what the market was. Not an egregious contract, but it's not pontooning the team certainly, and it's probably not going to hurt us tremendously. But yeah, I mean, again, boomer bust guy, as we know, there are certain times where you look at him and you're like, holy cow, did he pop off the screen? Did he make some great plays? Did he have some good games? But for the most part, still a liability. And unless he shores that up, I don't know. You know, will he otherwise been worth it? Because, you know, if he's not putting up 8+ sacks a game as well, which we know he's not going to, this is not his position, I don't know if it's worth it. But, you know, for $6 million, not terrible. And again, if it keeps Quinnen Williams happy and you can pay him around what you paid, forgive me, I don't know if it's Darren or Daron Payne, how you pronounce his name, but that'll be okay. So Chuck Clark, I kind of like this move. 7th round seventh rounder for who was a starting strong safety last year. And, is he going to replace Jordan Whitehead, or do we like him on the team? And a position in need, certainly. What do we think?
Yeah, they definitely need help in that area. The corners on the Jets were very good to great last year. The safeties were not. So any kind of help we get in that area is definitely a smart move.
Greg Zuerlein back for at least another year for about $3.35 million. Good enough. I'm happy that we got a little competence at the position. He was great last year. Even if he isn't as good this year as he was last, about worth the money, and you got a pretty good stopgap, and at least you got a real kicker on there, because we know, and every team should know what happens if you don't. Braxton Berrios is out. Signed into a 2-year contract 2 years ago. Didn't remotely live up to it last year in any of the positions that he played, and now he is gone. Your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm happy they kept Greg Zuerlein. It's fine that they didn't re-sign Braxton Berrios. Certainly, if they can get some sort of serviceable guard that they would have, with the money that would have been spent to keep Braxton Berrios, then great. I don't downplay if that's in fact what you're doing. The re-signing of Greg Zuerlein. The Jets have a habit, with the obvious exception of Pat Leahy, of not keeping competent kickers. I'm not calling Pat Leahy a competent kicker; he's terrible. But they never got rid of him. But kickers like Nick Folk, they just let get away. So to actually have a kicker like Greg Zuerlein, who is a legitimate NFL kicker, and keep him in fold, that's very good to see.
Hey, not only was I not downplaying it, and forgive me if it came across that way. I mean, to me, it was an obvious choice to bring him back, and I'm glad that they did. And I'm saying it's a stopgap, and he's an older guy, right? I wish years ago we would have paid Jason Myers when we had the chance, because obviously he was great when we had him and then proved to be very good on Seattle. It's important. It's extremely important to have a good kicker. It's like paramount. So I'm not downplaying at all. I'm just glad that he's back. To me, it was a no-brainer. I didn't need to.
Yeah, because it was a no-brainer. I expected the Jets not to do it. So yeah.
Right, and I kind of wanted to gloss over it because it was like, hey, that's very anti-Jetsian to do, but I think we have some better personnel running the ship right now. At least, again, you know how big of a fan I am of JD, and we'll be talking about him a lot through the season. But again, supposedly shopping Lawson, and we got to figure out what to do with Mosley. Some big moves to be made. Some bigger names taken off the market in that first day of tampering period out there. There's still some free agents to be had. But again, I don't think we're big players this year, right? We've got one major position to fill. We think we've already filled it. We'll see what happens. I mean, we've been on air now 45 minutes. No idea what's even happened out there. Did he sign? Did he not? My phone's not blowing up.
What's the one major position to fill? Is it center?
No, I'm talking about quarterback.
Okay, all right, yeah.
Yeah, I'm talking about the QB. I mean, again, the offensive line is going to be what it's going to be, and who knows? I really hope at some point we do. I mean, we are going to more than likely, I think, draft a center, and to your point, probably a second rounder, unless we give that away, and we'll see where this ultimately lands. But JD,
Dwayne Brown will be healthy. Mekhi Becton will come back and play a whole season, which he never has, and AVT will not be depreciated in any way by his injury. Everything that could go right will go right for the New York Jets with respect to the offensive line in 2023. Obviously, if that happens, then the Jets are going to be a much better football team.
Yeah, look, Breece Hall, by the way, is obviously his injury that you're coming off of. You're most concerned, and especially the position that he plays and the top speed that he's got to hit and the holes he's got to break through. But I think AVT is going to be just fine. There's a long history of a lot of guys coming back from a torn pec like that who have been just fine after a year off and some strength and conditioning, and he's that good of a player. So I'm not worried about him. I'm much more worried about Laken Tomlinson. He was such a liability last year, and again, you just got to see him be at least 30-40% better this year to make a difference. But I guess we'll see where it goes with the tackles, and we'll see who's under center. Hey, man, this was, I would say, a pretty damn good first episode back. Like I said, it is great to see you. It's great talking Jets football. It's great living in this space again when we are just like, what the hell is happening with our team? And, of course, we are the one team competing against ourselves for Aaron Rodgers, who's keeping us all in the dark. Pretty awesome. That's our Jets, man. Are you happy to be back?
I'm thrilled to be back. NYJ Ground Crew obviously is the most important Jets podcast in Jets universe. Thrilled to be a part of it. But let's make one thing perfectly clear to everyone out there in Jets universe. The only thing that matters is the New York Jets winning the Super Bowl and hoisting the Lombardi Trophy. Everything else is just mirrors and blue smoke.
Johnny Jets said it best. March 14th today is back here. Going once a week now for quite a few months before we get back into the training camps and ultimately in August of this and the preseason starts. So join us every Tuesday, 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific. We're doing it live. Me and Johnny will certainly have some guests on, but great start back, Johnny. Great to see you. Appreciate it. I think we'll certainly know what's up by the time we meet next Tuesday and where we're at. Thanks again, man.
Hey, Jets! Goodbye, Jets Universe.
Needed that. Have a good day, my man.